Long before the first sailing ships from Europe arrived on our shores, people in Aotearoa had their own ways of trading. There were no metal coins, no paper money, and no banks like we have today. Instead, Maori used a system of barter, which is like swapping things of value. This was a very personal and important way of doing business. It was all about relationships and trust between different wana, or families, and hapu, which are sub-tribes. If one group had a lot of kamara, or sweet potato, they might trade it with another group who lived by the sea and had plenty of dried fish. This wasn't just about getting what you needed. It was also a way to build friendships and alliances that could last for generations. The things people traded were often things they had made or gathered themselves. Beautifully woven flax baskets called kete were useful and also a work of art. These could be traded for food, tools, or other resources. Another very important item was punamu, or greenstone. Punamu is found only in Waipunamu, the South Island, and it was highly prized for its beauty, strength, and spiritual significance. It was carved into tools, weapons like the mir, and beautiful jewelry such as the hei-tiki. Because it was so rare and special, punamu was one of the most valuable items you could have. It was much more than just an object. It held stories, history, and the mana, or prestige, of its owners. This system of trade, known as koha, or gift exchange, was deeply woven into the fabric of Maori society. It wasn't always a direct swap on the spot. Sometimes you would give a gift to another group, and you would trust that they would give something of similar value back to you in the future. This built strong bonds between communities. It was about reciprocity, which means giving and receiving in a balanced way. People understood the value of different goods and services, even without a price tag. For instance, the effort it took to carve a beautiful punamu pendant was understood and respected, making it a precious item to trade for something that took a lot of effort to produce, like a large decorated cloak. So when we think about money in early New Zealand, we need to picture a world without coins. It was a world where value was found in natural resources, in skilled craftsmanship, and in the relationships between people. A finely carved waka, or canoe, or a warm korowai, which is a cloak, was worth a great deal. This system worked very well for hundreds of years. It was perfectly suited to the way people lived. But as more and more people began to arrive from other parts of the world, they brought with them a new and very different idea of what money was. They brought metal coins, and this would slowly but surely change the way everyone in Aotearoa thought about trade and value forever. When the first European sealers, whalers, and traders started to arrive in New Zealand in the late 1700s and early 1800s, they brought their money with them. But there wasn't just one type of coin. These ships came from all over the world, so they carried a messy jumble of different currencies. You could find Spanish silver dollars, Indian rupees, Dutch guilders, and American cents, all circulating in the small coastal settlements. For Maori and the early Pākehā, or European settlers, this was very confusing. Imagine trying to buy something when the person selling it only accepts a coin you've never seen before. It made trading very complicated and often unfair. Because of this confusion, many people went back to the familiar system of barter. But the items being traded started to change. Maori were very interested in the new things the Europeans brought. Metal tools, like axes and nails, were incredibly useful. They were much stronger and lasted longer than the stone tools people had been using. Blankets were also highly sought after because they were warm and easy to care for. And unfortunately, muskets, a type of gun, became a major trade item. These new goods had a huge impact on Maori society, changing everything from how people farmed to how they fought. It was a time of massive and rapid change for everyone living here. Even with all this barter, coins were still used, but they had no fixed value. A shopkeeper in Kororareka, now called Russell, might accept a British shilling for a certain amount of flour, but another shopkeeper down the road might ask for a French franc for the same thing. It was chaotic. To make things simpler, some traders started to issue their own private tokens or paper notes. These were like promises to pay a certain amount in real money later on. For example, a big trading company might create a small metal token that was worth 1 shilling. Workers could be paid in these tokens and then use them to buy goods at the company's store. This unofficial money system was a temporary solution, but it wasn't ideal. The tokens and notes were often only accepted by the person or company that issued them, so they weren't very useful elsewhere. There were also many fakes, and some tokens were made of cheap materials that didn't last. The whole situation showed that New Zealand needed a proper, organized money system. People needed to be able to trust the money in their pockets. They needed one official type of currency that everyone could use and understand, with values that were the same no matter where you were in the country. This growing need for order set the stage for the next big step in our country's money story. In 1840, something happened that changed New Zealand forever: the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi. This marked the beginning of New Zealand becoming a British colony. With this formal connection to Britain came many changes, and one of the most important was to our money. The British government decided it was time to clean up the confusing mix of coins being used. They declared that British currency would be the official money for the colony of New Zealand. This meant that from then on, all official business had to be done using British pounds, shillings, and pence. This was a huge step towards creating a single, unified economy for the growing country. The stars of this new money system, especially for everyday purchases, were the copper coins. These were the penny and the halfpenny. They were the coins of the people, used for buying small things like a loaf of bread, a newspaper, or a handful of sweets. These coins were large, heavy, and made of copper. You could really feel their weight in your hand or pocket. The penny was quite big, about 3 centimeters across, and had the image of the British monarch, the king or queen, on one side. On the other side was a famous design of Britannia, a female figure with a helmet, a shield, and a trident, who represented the power of the British Empire. These coins were not just practical tools for buying and selling, they were also powerful symbols. Every time someone used a penny, they were holding a small piece of the British Empire in their hand. The face of the monarch reminded everyone of the connection to Britain, which was thousands of kilometers away across the ocean. For the settlers, this was a comforting reminder of home. For Maori, it was another sign of the huge changes that were happening to their world. These coins showed that New Zealand was now part of a global empire, and its economy was tied directly to Britain's. Slowly but surely, the old ways of barter were pushed to the edges of society. For nearly 100 years, from 1840 all the way into the early 1930s, these British copper coins were the main low-value currency used in New Zealand. As the monarchs in Britain changed, so did the portraits on the coins. People in New Zealand would have used pennies featuring Queen Victoria, then King Edward VII, and then King George V. But while the faces changed, the coins themselves, the heavy penny and halfpenny, remained the backbone of daily commerce. They were so common that they became part of our language, with phrases like, "a penny for your thoughts." But as New Zealand began to grow its own unique identity, people started to wonder, shouldn't we have our very own coins? By the 1930s, New Zealand was a very different place than it was in 1840. We were still part of the British Commonwealth, but we were developing our own sense of national identity. People started to feel a stronger connection to New Zealand itself, not just to Britain. At the same time, there was a practical problem with our money. All our coins were still being made in Britain and shipped all the way to New Zealand. This was expensive and sometimes unreliable. On top of that, Britain had recently changed its silver coins to be only 50% silver, but New Zealand was still using the older, heavier coins that were 92.5% silver. People started hoarding the old, more valuable coins, which caused a coin shortage. The Great Depression of the 1930s made things even worse. It was a time of great economic hardship around the world, and New Zealand was hit hard. The government needed more control over its own economy to help the country recover. Relying on British coins made this difficult. All these factors, a growing national identity, the coin shortage, and the economic crisis, led to a big decision. In 1933, the New Zealand government passed the Coinage Act. This important law gave New Zealand the power to create and issue its very own, unique set of coins for the very first time. It was a declaration of economic independence. While the first new silver coins, like the shilling and florin, were introduced in 1933, it took a little longer to get our own copper coins ready. These coins were actually not pure copper. They were made of bronze, which is a mix of copper, tin, and zinc. This metal mixture is harder and more durable than pure copper, so the coins would last longer in circulation. In 1935, the government officially announced that the new bronze penny and halfpenny would be introduced. However, due to delays in getting the designs just right and shipping them from the Royal Mint in London where they were made, they didn't actually appear in people's pockets until 1940. The arrival of New Zealand's first pennies and halfpennies was a moment of great national pride. For the first time, people could hold coins that were distinctly Kiwi. They were still linked to Britain, as they kept the same size, weight, and value as their British counterparts, and they still had the British monarch on the front. But the designs on the back were all ours. They were chosen to represent the unique nature and culture of Aotearoa. This was more than just a change in currency. It was a statement. It said that New Zealand was a nation with its own story, its own symbols, and its own future. When it came to designing our first bronze coins, it was important to get them just right. These coins would be seen and used by everyone, every day, so they had to represent New Zealand well. On the obverse, or the front side of the coins, was a portrait of the reigning British monarch, King George V. This was a tradition that showed New Zealand was still a loyal member of the British Commonwealth. The portrait was designed by a famous artist from the Royal Mint, Percy Metcalfe. It showed the king looking to the left, wearing his crown. This link to the monarchy was important, but the real excitement was about what would go on the other side. The reverse, or backside, was where New Zealand could really shine. The design for the new penny was chosen to feature one of our most loved native birds, the tui. The design, created by artist Leonard Cornwall Mitchell, shows a two perched on a flowering kohai branch. The tui is known for its beautiful song and its iridescent, shimmering feathers. The kohai is one of our most iconic trees, famous for its bright yellow flowers in spring. This image was instantly recognizable and celebrated the unique natural beauty of Aotearoa. It was a simple, elegant design that connected the coin directly to the land and its native wildlife. For the smaller halfpenny, another powerful and uniquely New Zealand symbol was chosen, the hei-tiki. This special design was also created by Leonard Cornwall Mitchell. The hei-tiki is a taonga, or treasure, in Maori culture. It's a carved pendant, often made from punamu, or greenstone, that is worn around the neck. It is considered to have great spiritual and cultural importance, representing ancestors and bringing good fortune. Putting the hei-tiki on a coin was a very significant decision. It was one of the first times that a Maori cultural symbol was used on our national currency, showing a growing recognition of the importance of Maori culture to New Zealand's identity. Together, these designs told a story about our nation. The king's portrait on the front showed our history and our connection to the Commonwealth. The tui and the hei-tiki on the back showed our unique identity, celebrating both our natural environment, Papatuanuku, the land, and our indigenous culture, Tangata Wenua, the people of the land. These weren't just coins anymore. They were miniature works of art that every New Zealander could carry with them. They were symbols of a nation that was proud of its heritage and confident about its place in the world. Every time someone spent a penny, they were sharing a small piece of the New Zealand story. The world of royalty is always changing, and this had a direct effect on the coins in New Zealanders' pockets. The portrait on the front of our coins had to match the monarch sitting on the throne in Britain. The first New Zealand coins were designed with King George V on them, but he passed away in 1936. His son, Edward VIII, became king, and plans were made to create new coins with his portrait. However, he was king for less than a year before he abdicated or gave up the throne to Mary Wallace Simpson. Because his reign was so short, no New Zealand coins with his face on them were ever officially released into circulation. Following this, King George VI, the father of Queen Elizabeth II, became king. His portrait, also designed by Percy Metcalfe, soon appeared on all of New Zealand's coins, from the bronze penny and halfpenny to the silver coins. Just like his father, his portrait faced to the left. This continued the tradition of each new monarch facing the opposite direction to the one before them. So from 1940, the familiar 2 penny and hei-tiki halfpenny now carried the image of King George VI. These coins were used all through the difficult years of World War II and the post-war recovery, becoming a constant, reliable part of daily life for Kiwis. In 1952, King George VI passed away, and his daughter, Princess Elizabeth, became Queen Elizabeth II. Her coronation in 1953 was a major event celebrated all around the Commonwealth, including here in New Zealand. A new set of coins was needed to feature her portrait. The design, created by Mary Gillick, showed a youthful queen wearing a laurel wreath. Following tradition, her portrait faced to the right, the opposite direction to her father. From 1953 onwards, the bronze pennies and halfpennies that jingled in our pockets featured this new, now famous image of the young queen. The reverse designs, the tui and the hei-tiki, remained exactly the same, a testament to their timeless and popular appeal. For over a quarter of a century, from 1940 to 1967, these bronze coins were a staple of New Zealand life. While the face on the front changed with the times, moving from George V to George VI and finally to Queen Elizabeth II, the coins themselves remained symbols of stability. They were still the same size, the same weight, and made of the same durable bronze metal. The beloved tu and hei-tiki designs on the back became deeply familiar to generations of New Zealanders. These coins saw the country through war, reconstruction, and a period of growing prosperity, all before the next great change in our money was about to happen. By the 1960s, the old British system of pounds, shillings, and pence was starting to feel a bit old-fashioned and complicated. Many countries around the world were switching to a much simpler decimal system, where money is based on units of 10 and 100. It's the system we use today with dollars and cents. Calculating with pounds, where 12 pence made a shilling and 20 shillings made a pound, was tricky. The New Zealand government decided it was time for us to make the switch too. This was a massive undertaking that would affect everyone in the country. Monday, the 10th of July, 1967, was chosen as Decimal Currency Day, or D-Day. With the switch to dollars and cents, all of our old coins had to be replaced. The big, heavy bronze penny and halfpenny were on their way out. In their place, 2 new small bronze coins were introduced, the 1-cent coin and the 2-cent coin. Just like their predecessors, these new coins were made of bronze, a mix of copper with other metals. The new 1-cent coin was worth a little more than the old penny, and the new 2-cent coin was worth a little more than 2 pennies. The government ran a huge public education campaign with a cartoon character called Mr. Dollar to help everyone understand the change. The new coins needed new designs. The front, or obverse, of course, featured the portrait of Queen Elizabeth II, linking the new currency to the old. But the reverse sides were filled with exciting new images that, once again, were chosen to reflect New Zealand's unique identity. The new 1-cent coin featured a beautifully detailed design of a fern leaf, one of our most famous national symbols. The 2-cent coin showed a kowhai flower and its leaves, echoing the kowhai branch that had been part of the original penny design with the tui. These designs, created by artist James Barry, were fresh, modern, and distinctly Kiwi. The arrival of the 1-cent and 2-cent coins marked the end of the road for the old, heavy pennies and halfpennies. For a short time, both old and new coins were used together to help people adjust, but soon the old coins were withdrawn from circulation. Many people kept them as souvenirs of the old money. The new, smaller bronze coins quickly became a normal part of everyday life. They were used to pay for lollies, stamps, and to give exact change. For over 20 years, these little bronze coins were the smallest units of our money, continuing the long story of copper-colored coins in New Zealand. The little 1-cent and 2-cent coins served us well for many years, but by the 1980s, they were starting to cause problems. The main issue was something called inflation. This is when prices for goods and services go up over time, which means that money becomes less valuable. A 1-cent coin in the 1980s could buy much, much less than it could in 1967. They had become so low in value that they were more of a nuisance than a help. People would get them as change and just leave them in a jar at home. For businesses, handling and counting thousands of these tiny coins was a waste of time and money. The cost of making the coins was also becoming a problem. The value of the copper and other metals in the coins, plus the cost of minting and shipping them, was actually starting to be more than the face value of the coins themselves. It was literally costing the government more than 1 cent to make a 1-cent coin. It was clear that these small bronze coins had reached the end of their useful life. So in 1989, the Reserve Bank of New Zealand made an announcement: the 1-cent and 2-cent coins would be withdrawn from circulation. From then on, all cash transactions would be rounded to the nearest 5 cents. This change didn't happen overnight. The coins were officially demonetized, meaning they were no longer legal tender, on the 30th of April, 1990. People were encouraged to take their jars of coins to the bank and cash them in. Many people also donated them to charities, in massive coin trails and other fundraising drives. The end of the 1 and 2 cent coins meant that for the first time in our country's history, we no longer had any bronze or copper-colored coins in our pockets. The lowest value coin was now the silver-colored 5-cent piece. It was a quiet but significant moment in our monetary history. Even though our lowest value coins were now silver-colored, copper didn't disappear from our money completely. In 2006, New Zealand changed its coins again, making them smaller, lighter, and from cheaper metals. The new 10-cent coin, which replaced the old, larger one, was made of steel and plated with copper. This gave it a familiar copper color, reminding us of the pennies and 1-cent coins of the past. However, it's just a thin coating. Pure copper and bronze coins, the heavy, durable workhorses of our currency for so long, were now officially a thing of the past, belonging to the world of history and coin collectors. Looking back at the journey of New Zealand's copper and bronze coins is like looking back at the history of our country itself. It all started with a system of barter, built on relationships and the resources of the land. This reflects the early Maori society of Aotearoa, a world deeply connected to nature and community. The arrival of a messy mix of foreign coins shows a time of early contact and change, a chaotic period when different worlds were colliding on our shores. This era was full of both opportunity and confusion, as new people and new ideas began to shape a different kind of society. The decision to make British coins our official currency in 1840 was a clear sign of our new status as a colony. The heavy copper pennies with the monarch on the front and the symbol of Britannia on the back were a daily reminder of our connection to the powerful British Empire. For almost a century, these coins represented our identity as a distant part of Britain. But as we grew as a nation, we started to feel a need for our own symbols. The creation of our very own bronze penny and halfpenny in the 1930s was a proud moment, a declaration that we had our own unique story to tell. The designs we chose for those first coins, the tui and the hei-tiki, are incredibly telling. They show a nation beginning to embrace its own identity, celebrating both its unique natural environment and its indigenous Maori heritage. As the monarchs changed on the front of the coins, our Kiwi symbols on the back remained constant, becoming beloved icons. The big switch to decimal currency in 1967, with the new 1 and 2 cent coins, was another step in our journey, showing us moving with the modern world and simplifying our daily lives, while still keeping native flora like the fern and kohai as our symbols. Today, those physical copper and bronze coins are gone from our wallets. Their removal in the 1980s and the final switch to copper-plated steel reflects our changing economy and the digital world we now live in, where physical cash is used less and less. These coins are now relics of a different time. They are keepsakes, collector's items, and small, round pieces of history. They tell a rich story of our journey from a British colony to a proud and independent Pacific nation, a story of how we see ourselves and how our identity has been shaped and stamped in metal over the years.